everyone. So I wanted to break down a specific example with you guys. This is an example of a lesson I actually taught in my classroom. So I'm a big fan of a strategy called TIKA when I teach body paragraphs. This is teaching that strategy of TIKA when students are using that. So you'll see my standard here is writing text in a variety of modes. So the part I'm targeting is here. Write informative texts that examine and convey complex ideas, concepts, and information clearly and accurately through effective selection, organization, and analysis of content. So you'll see that based on that, right here, coming back to my topic and my standard, my I can or my learning targets come specifically back to that. So I can write a body paragraph. I can identify the parts of TIKA or TIQA, and I can take notes on body paragraphs. So when I dive into this lesson, you'll see here the bell work question is, how do you write a body paragraph? What are the parts? So I use an interactive notebook in the classroom. So I would instruct my students where they would do that in the classroom. And this goal here is to have students think about what they do when they write a paragraph, because students, a lot of the time when they come into class, they have different strategies. People have taught them in different ways, or some of my students, sometimes they don't really know how to write a body paragraph. So having them activate that prior knowledge and think what they do know is really helpful. So, I have my students write for a couple of minutes, usually to the length of a song. And then we discuss that as a whole class, and then we go. So we're going to instruct on body paragraphs using the guiding PowerPoint. So students are going to use guided notes, basically, so they don't have to write everything down. I'm a big fan of these. So they will glue in their guided notes and get out a writing utensil and a highlighter so that they can mark up their notes. So basically, I'm going to introduce TIKA as a methodology of writing a body paragraph. And then they're going to engage in guided notes as we go through each part of TIQA. So you'll notice here, I have a bunch of things that we're using over here. So suggestions for activities, I'm highlighting what I used. I bolded them. So graphic organizer, those are my guided notes. Collaboration, discussion, questioning, we're modeling. I'm going to be modeling those notes as we go in how to write a paragraph. My assessment of how they're doing this, I'm looking at just observations. I'm monitoring students. We're going to look at the graphic organizer and collaboration, right? And there's no really assessment of learning yet because this is notes. It's a building piece. So as we go into this, right, students are going to engage with guided notes as they go through each part of TIKA. So the teacher's going to model the appropriate thinking for each letter, focusing on what the letter means. So T is topic sentence, for example, and what it needs to include, an example as well as a non-example, because a lot of time for our learners, right, we think about what we should do, but then we also want to think about what we shouldn't be doing. So then after this, they're going to go through an example paragraph. And the students are going to have to identify each part of TIKA in that example paragraph. They're going to color code it. So then they have a model that they can go back and look at. Hey, this is exactly what an informative paragraph should look like. They have a model for them to do. And then their conclusion for the day, their kind of like check out the door, is that they're going to do a TIKA paragraph skill relay. So what this is they're going to work in partners, and every student is going to get a set of like strips, and it's the parts of a paragraph cut up in random orders, right? And they have to put it in order. And so for those students that are struggling, this is a great place for me as the instructor to remediate content and work to answer questions and also help them understand the connection between specific pieces. So if a student is not understanding what the analysis is, which is the A, for example, I can help them with that. And to basically the knowledge check is they have to get their paragraph checked off once it's in order, right? So informal assessments. My informal assessments really are observations. I'm going to assess student learning based on classroom observations while instruction occurs. And I'm going to make notes of the trends in student questions, right? So typically if I get a bunch of questions on analysis, I know that that's where I want to focus more time. And then I'll circulate during work time. So keep in mind that the informal assessments does not have to be like them putting pen to paper. It can be things like you circulating, you making note of trends, you reflecting. But then the formal assessment is the exit ticket. There's TICA paragraph skill relay. And the reason that this works is then the next day students will actually apply TICA and they're going to write their own body of paragraph. I supports for a variety of learners. I developed the guided notes as a scaffold, right? Because the guided notes help students who often require redirection, help them stay focused because they're not sitting there having to, jot down all of these things. They have something very specific to focus on. I tend to use proximity and reminders to help these students stay on task as well. I also, when I was teaching this lesson, I had a student with a visual impairment. So I gave them the PowerPoint and then the notes in an enlarged font to help support that learner. So if I was going to be teaching this online, I could do this where students do their interactive notebook in OneNote. Instead of highlighting as they go, they would, with like a piece of paper, they would just use the colors online, and then I could teach this in presentation mode. You'll notice that I need students to have a notebook, pen or pencil, and highlighters. They need glue sticks. I need the TICA PowerPoint and the TICA guided notes. So this is just one way to break down a lesson. This is an example. So modify this as you will. Use it in your lesson, in your classroom, for what is best for your learners.